Hi, you guys. Welcome back. I think I took another break, didn't I? Yeah, I can't help doing that. Life keeps lifing and things keep happening. And, it's finding the time. I've got other things to be doing, like, my main job, etc. But anyway, it's nice to see you. So I'm going to continue with my musical vein. And I've decided to do a video that discusses quirky British female musicians, singers, and songwriters. And I've compiled a top 10. Now, there are so many women that we could have included in this, but we haven't, because otherwise this video would be about 3 hours long. And as much as we love 3 hour long videos, we hadn't got time for it. So, yeah, that's not what we're going to do here today. So, sorry about that. So, British female songwriters have actually played a disproportionate large role in shaping global music. And I think that even if you are international audience out here there, you would probably be able to tell me something about a British singer songwriter that you might know from any era really in the past 50 or 60 years. So we have sort of covered a range of women here. They've got an influencing sound, image, identity politics. We've said this with British women. There is a lot of identity politics within being a British woman and generally the perceptions of what British femininity looks like. And I think quirkiness is definitely on there, and the list does feature quite a lot of quirky women. There were some other quirky women that I could have included, but I didn't. So let's get into it with, first of all, a little overview about British women and music, and then into my little top 10, and then you can see if you agree with me. So let's start it off. Now, as we have discovered with my little video series on British musicians, starting with British guitar bands and then British kind of synth bands, I suppose, or keyboard bands, we're now looking at British singer-songwriters, females. I think there's a lot of British music has taken a lot of different directions and has impacted massively on the global stage, not the golden stage. And actually, I was watching the Brit Awards a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of proud actually, because I was thinking there are some really talented females here, and obviously talented other British bands and musicians. But I really feel like we've come a long way in the last few years, and I feel like certainly the last 25 years been some phenomenal British women in music. So I suppose it really started for us. Obviously, in the 1960s, the idea of a female vocalist was quite common, and we're going to look at two that sort of derived from the 1960s. But it was probably the 1970s when one of our very significant ones emerged and kind of really probably cemented the archetype of the quirky British female singer-songwriter and led the way for the others that took on the mantle after them. In the 1980s, saw British women, leading that synth-pop global spread. We then had a lot of R&B, hyper-pop trends, indie. There was lots of women around doing lots of different genres of music in the 1990s. So there was a lot of innovation and genre leadership. We can definitely see that. And we're very creative. And we often do like to write our own songs here in the UK. And then there's that transatlantic and global crossover. And we've seen women end up on the other side of America doing some really quite cool things, and that Anglo-American pop culture that we share. So often, if it's successful here in the UK, it can translate quite nicely over to our English-speaking cousins over in America, Australia, South Africa. So we often are able to sort of, merge and are quite fluid in the kind of influences for music from these different parts of the world. And therefore, this has helped British artists feel both culturally specific and globally accessible, and therefore widens their international appeal, which is absolutely great. So visual culture and pop icon is obviously a big part of this as well. British female singer-songwriters have strongly influenced how pop stars construct an image and their narrative. I think it's kind of authentic that what British women are able to do as pop stars. It doesn't always feel contrived. It doesn't always feel the brand. It kind of feels who they are. And I think the reason that so many of the women on this list have made it on is because of that originality and that authenticity to who they are, and their sort of interpretation of maybe what was big in the cultural zeitgeist at the time that they emerged on the scene. And their approaches have shaped modern expectations that pop stars can be multimedia storytellers and not just rather good vocalists. So obviously there is that to bear in mind. So I suppose, how do they represent British women then, in an international capacity? So as I've said, individualism and eccentricity. I think we're very clear that we've got a different kind of persona to American singer-songwriters or female artists. Americans can feel a lot more pop, a lot more glossy, or a lot more contrived, or a lot more groomed than maybe our British ones. I mean, think of like Lola Young recently. She does look like she might have just fallen out of bed and accidentally written a really great album. If we look at, Lily Allen as well, she literally just ranted about her life and has made a really good album. So I think that's kind of what we do here in the UK. We kind of take our lived experiences and transpose them into the world of music, and it really serves us well. We're often quite intellectually creative. I think we are clever, aren't we, British women? Do you agree with me? Maybe you don't. Definitely slightly eccentric and quirky. Resistant to standardized pop star femininity. I'm not saying we don't have those. We have tried in the past to have those British female pop stars, and a lot of these have probably come from other industries. But I think the real women that are successful are the ones that have a little bit of originality and are kind of doing it for themselves. And they contrast with the more polished and commercially successful, maybe our American counterparts, or what we see kind of being given from the other markets around Europe and Asia and Africa and America. So yeah, absolutely. So that emotional authenticity and introspection is kind of important. British singer-songwriters frequently foreground personal storytelling and emotional nuance. They show vulnerability, social anxiety, class identity, which can be a really important part, relationships and self-reflection, and they've contributed to a global perception of British women as thoughtful, articulate, and emotionally expressive. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That's what we are. And not just glamorous and performative. So I think that's why there's so much to be celebrated here in the British female music scene. There's also a lot of feminism and gender expression across the different eras, kind of pushing the boat out in a lot of different ways. British artists have helped expand ideas about how women can look and behave in public culture, challenge gender norms through fashion and performance. We've definitely got some people that are very fluid in their gender identity on this list. Foreground female creative control. They've addressed sexism, aging, and body politics. They presented both softness and strength as valid identities. And I suppose that is the female identity, isn't it? And this has contributed to an evolving image of British women as independent cultural producers rather than passive pop figures. And that multicultural and contemporary British identity, there's a lot of diversity in British society. And, this diversity is really something that I'm quite proud of. If we think of women like Dua Lipa, Rita Ora, Paloma Faith, these are actually women that have a shared European identity, be it Kosovan, be it Spanish, there is another level to them. If we look at, Charli XCX, there is, that British Asian mixed kind of experience. And so there's a lot of different things that come to this. Also, women, British pop artists can be quite political and share their political viewpoints and take a strong stance on things. And that intersectional feminism, there's that idea of being a mother. Some of our women are mothers themselves, or not having children and not conforming to that, and leading a different way. I mean, one of our artists talks about open relationships, so there's a lot to be said there. My cat's meowing, she's down here looking very adorable. And as a result, global audiences increasingly see British womanhood as plural, hybrid, and socially engaged, which it is, isn't it? So what's the overall significance of these British artists? Well, they've taken together British female singer-songwriters have helped construct a global myth of British women. I mean, is it a myth? I don't know. Of creative and individual, original, emotionally intelligent, socially observant, stylistically bold, and culturally influential, and their careers show how national identity can be expressed through pop music, turning personal storytelling into international cultural impact. So that's my little overview. Do you agree with that? I don't know, but let's get into the top 10. And there were so many women that could have been in this list, and even now I'm like, should I have included X, Y, and Z? But I was sure to try and give that honorable mentions as I work my through the list. So let's see the top 10. Off we go. So we begin with Sandie Shaw, and you might recognise her as our Eurovision winner from 1967. So Eurovision, for those of you that don't know, this is a song contest that is shown on television throughout Europe, where countries enter a singer to sing a song, obviously, and then it gets whittled down into like the final 24 contestants from those countries who get to perform live for a big show, and then the rest of the countries get to vote for which act or artist song they really enjoyed. So 1967, the winner was Britain and Sandie Shaw with Puppet on a String. Now, Sandie Shaw didn't just end up being a singer for Eurovision. She actually ended up, having a few hits and the songs, and was a kind of credible artist in her own right. And at the time when female pop stars were expected to look polished and glamorous, Sandie Shaw often performed without her shoes, and my first encounter of her was being told that she didn't wear any shoes, and I remember as a little girl being told this story, and this gave her a relaxed, unconventional stage presence and actually became a bit of her trademark, signalling independence and a subtle rejection of showbiz norms, as well as being a very quirky thing for her to do. So she was kind of part of that mod minimalism, that understated cool. She wasn't a dramatic diva. She embodied swinging 60s mod culture, simple dresses, natural movement, and almost detached vocal delivery. Her look felt modern and youthful, but slightly aloof, helping redefine what a female pop art star should be. And her winning song, Puppet on a String, had a playful, almost theatrical tone to it. Yet she balanced this with serious pop credibility and later indie reinvention, creating a quirky mix of novelty and artistic authenticity. And there's our word again that I've said that features all the way through a lot of the people that are in my top 10. So number 10, we have her as our number 10 in my little entry here, and that's Sandie Shaw, and she is a nice 1960s classic to start us off. So who's next? Goldfinger. Okay, I'm never doing that again, but I'm now just caught myself singing live on a video. Great. But who is at number 9? So it's Shirley Bassey, the Welsh wonder that really defines the glitz, the glamour, the theatrical nature of that kind of big diva that we kind of know her for. So she's ultra dramatic diva performance style. She's famous for larger than life gestures, sweeping arm movements, intense vocal delivery, and some pretty great James Bond theme songs, which obviously helped to pulled her to international stardom and that golden era of those James Bond films as well. She's kind of high camp glamour, very jazzy, sequin gowns, bold jewelry, dramatic lighting, and powerful poses, and just a phenomenal theatrical diva, quite frankly. She's had an exaggerated showbiz aesthetic, which gave her a very distinctive, unique, and authentic identity. She was glamorous, but she was also knowingly over the top and kind of embraced it, hence that campy vibe that she had. She was good with a unique kind of blend of pop music, grand and orchestral kind of, anthems, which I'm sure we could all name a few. And this cinematic quality contributed to her quirky positioning as both a chart singer and a symbol of spectacle and drama. So our number 9 is the wonderful, glamorous Shirley Bassey. So who's at number 8? So we're now in Scotland and back to a group that we kind of looked at in our synth keyboard band video the other week. And this is Annie Lennox, who quite frankly is a phenomenal female artist in her own right, but began her career as part of the band Eurythmics, and that androgynous image and art pop innovation that she led with in the early 1980s. So she challenged those norms by looking very androgynous, almost kind of masculine, but the heavy makeup. She had sharp suits, cropped hair, and bold makeup, as I've said, that really would make her a very beautiful woman even more eye-catching and striking. She had a look that blurred traditional ideas of what femininity could be, which again was that unique and distinctive element that she brought to her art, to her craft. She was, culturally important in discussions around gender expression, which is actually quite prevalent in the early 80s. There was also that art pop storytelling. With Eurythmics, she helped turn music videos into stylized mini pieces of art, often using surreal imagery, symbolism, and cinematography in a really clever way. I almost said that word. Are you noticing I'm struggling to speak today? Her visual concepts gave songs a deeper and emotional and artistic context. And then we saw this in the work that she produced in the early 90s. Her voice had a gospel-like intensity, which contrasted with the cool, melancholic synth sounds of the 80s. And obviously, some of the songs that she produced in the 1990s. I mean, Why is just a beautiful ballad. Again, she had that concept of showgirl before Taylor Swift got there, and just some really amazingly upbeat songs, Walking on Broken Glass being one of them as well. So yeah, she was a bit of a diva, and her album was titled Diva, if I remember correctly. So here we have a number 7. Number 8, I can count, is Anna Lennox. So, actually, at number 7 now, we've already referenced her earlier, but we have the wonderful Lily Allen, who's having a little bit of a moment again here at the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. Her deadpan humour and sharp social commentary about British life have made her very quirky and definitely deserving of being on this list. She's controversial, her lyrics are cheeky, and she has a real way of storytelling through her music. She has that natural London accent that comes through. So where there's always with British artists that kind of battle to not sound American and to really lead with her accent, Lily Allen definitely nailed that one. She used witty everyday language in her songs. Her lyrics often almost feel like gossip, diary entries, or social observations, making pop music sound unusually informal and humorous. She's really good at wordplay and punning as well. So again, some of her songs are just really insightful. She has a relatable anti-diva image. Instead of polished glamour, she projected a casual, slightly rebellious girl next door. Persona, tracksuits, trainers, and playful styling helped her feel authentic and different from traditional pop star expectations. I mean, she's capable of being very glamorous, but even on her most recent album cover, it's like artistically painted and then that big puffer jacket, which kind of keeps it British and kind of keeps it quite cool. She mixes light pop sounds with sharp social commentary, singing a song about wandering around London, talking about a relationship that turns bitter, and even talking about infidelity and, open relationships. And some of the most recent songs on her album have been absolutely phenomenal. So I do, go and have a listen to that. There's some amazing stuff there. So this contrasts with her quirky tone, fun on the surface, but surprisingly critical underneath. And there's that intelligence that just absolutely ebbs throughout most of what she writes and makes her really interesting to listen to. So go put on some Lily Allen and check her out and see what I mean. So that was number 7. So that means we're at number 6 now, and that brings us to Paloma Faith. Absolutely phenomenal voice, and I think that kind of almost ADHD hyperactivity, which she launched herself into the scene, slightly older than you probably would have expected her to have launched herself, but again showing that we are very embracing of whatever you choose to start your music career here in the UK. She has that vintage cabaret soul diva with flamboyant fashion and again that theatricality and the stage presence. She's actually really funny. I've seen her live and she could be a stand-up comedian, quite frankly. And she has that lovely little unique, again, London voice, her accent. She has that bold vintage kind of glamour, towering beehive, dramatic makeup, glamorous gowns. So when she first came onto the scene, there was that 1940s kind of aesthetic aesthetic to her, which gave her a nostalgic kind of buzz. She has a big emotional storytelling. Again, she writes her own songs. She has been quite political in some of her music as well. Her biggest hits, Only Love Can Hurt Like This, obviously recently kind of made it to the mainstream thanks to TikTok, but has always been a really beautiful song and one of my favorites. And she treats songs like mini narratives, creating a quirky blend of pop, concert, and musical theatre energy. She combines old school Motown or cabaret sounds. She mixed classic soul influences with modern pop attitude. She did a lot of work with Sigma and kind of more dancey stuff as well. And yeah, she's a really very versatile artist, still making music, still out there, very political as well. She's very good at kind of voicing and articulating things in a really clever way. I follow her on Instagram and just think she's really amazing, actually. So here we have our number 7, which is Paloma Faith. No, she's not number 7, is she? She's number 6. I need to learn to count. So I believe we're at number 5. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Numbers are not my thing. Okay. And this isn't about numbers. This is about the women and their song abilities. And we have our prima donna girl in a prima donna world. And this is Marina, maybe known as Marina and the Diamonds to you. She has a quirky, exploring identity, fame, and gender through stylized characters. She has kind of eras herself. And, you know, it is some really insightful songs that talk about stories and her experiences of going to America and kind of what she found there. She's known for creating distinctive pop eras, as I've said, with fictional personas, for example, the Electra Heart character. This storytelling approach makes the music feel like, again, a theatrical exploration of identity, fame, and femininity. Is this like a thread that we're picking up on some of the people that I've picked for this list? Her bold styling, graphic makeup, bright colours, vintage references. We obviously like vintage here in the UK in our artists. And symbolic imagery gives this playful artificiality part of her quirky appeal. And yeah, she's pretty classic. She often writes about consumer culture, loneliness, ambition, and modern womanhood. So again, women like listening to women. And I think it's become really apparent in recent years that women will spend a lot of money listening to other women and reading other women and watching other women. It took a really long time for people to grasp on that there's this whole thing of this whole audience that doesn't need to be shaped by men, it can be shaped by women, and therefore, you know, gives her that appeal. She has an intellectual edge. Again, I've said this is quite common with a lot of the women on this list. And she's a pop commenter as well as a performer. Again, I've seen her live, brilliant vocals, really creative songwriter, and a really good strong red lip. So Marina is our number 5. So we arrive at number 4, and here we meet Florence and her machine. So Florence Welch, biggest hit, probably Shake It Out. Love that song, and it featured obviously on our synthy kind of list the other week. She's mystical, almost ritual-like stage present, very ethereal, gothic romantic visual identity with that very bright red hair, but then can transcend into, again, some really interesting alternative looks, epic indie pop sound, and literary themes. We like a bit of a literary theme, don't we? And our number 1 will be definitely a literary theme. So she often performs barefoot as well. So there's obviously something about that on British women. Spinning, running, and using sweeping arm movements. Again, a bit like Shirley Bassey herself. Giving concerts a spiritual or cathartic atmosphere. Her performances feel less like standard pop shows and more like emotional ceremonies. And anyone who's been to them will probably agree. She has almost a pre-Raphaelite art vibe, folklore, and bohemian festival culture, as I've said. But she's also able to build into huge orchestral choruses and draw on themes such as mythology, love, death, and spirituality, which gives her music a very unique and distinctive quality. This grand storytelling approach gives her musical that theatrical scale, as well as being able to sit in within that mainstream pop. So there we go. Florence Welch is our number 4. So our number 3 could be classed as a bit of a brat, but she's not. She's Charli XCX, and quite frankly, she wants to break all the rules. Yay! So she's a pop experimentalist, who helped shape the hyperpop sound while staying chart relevant. And she's also written loads of songs for other people as well. She's a clever singer-songwriter, and we love this about her. She is good at constant reinvention and very experimental with pop sounds. She's known for pushing pop into new sonic territory, blending mainstream hooks with underground electronic and hyperpop influences. And this willingness to be adaptive and change her style is part of her appeal and makes her feel unpredictable and creatively quirky. So Boom Clap, you might know her for that. You might know her for Fancy, where she obviously wrote the chorus, and the Icona Pop, I Don't Care, I love it. And she most recently has been working on the Wuthering Heights soundtrack, which I absolutely loved and thought it was great, and have really enjoyed listening to that over the last few weeks. Brat, obviously, was her kind of defining work, I think, of the last couple of years. And I think, obviously, that Brat summer vibe, you know, some of the songs on there, you know, Sympathy is a Knife, absolutely loved that song. 365, great, and even got a little, you know, version made for Bridgerton. So she's all over the place and she's amazing. She's hedonistic club culture with futuristic fashion and digital aesthetic. She just recently released a mockumentary, which shows the ability to take the mick out of herself and to maybe not take herself too seriously. She's self-aware and she's an ironic pop storyteller. She frequently plays the idea of being a pop star, writing songs about fame, image, and the music industry. She's so Julia. I did it again. The cringiness of me. And this meta approach gives her a playful, tongue-in-cheek quality, which we absolutely love. And I just love this sass. That girl don't give no funks, does she? So absolutely love her. So Charli XCX is our number 3. So who's at number 2, I hear you cry? Well, we are going for M.I.A, and we might know her for Paper Planes. We might know her for her controversial, kind of jarring beats. She's a global mashup musical style, mixing the hip hop world with provocative visuals. And let's not deny that, you know, bad girls do it well, and she's absolutely amazing. So she's known for blending hip hop, electronic beats, world music, and street sounds into a collage like pop sound. Mixing genres, it feels raw, it feels unconventional, helping her stand out from the more polished mainstream artists. Again, we like this difference. We don't want a repetitive formula. We like people who are unique and distinctive. And M.I.A is definitely one of these people. Her bold visuals, bright prints, graffiti graphics, lo-fi videos, and act, which is symbolized in her music videos, created a rebellious art school aesthetic. She often used pop culture to comment in issues such as migration, conflict, and identity, which obviously we can hear of in Paper Planes. On stage, she projects fearless confidence and chaotic energy. And don't we just love a bit of chaotic energy? I know I do. Chaos energy is one of my things. Interacting directly with crowds and breaking traditional pop performance norms. This edgy presence reinforces her reputation as boundary pushing and culturally provocative. Like, let's go to Iran and film loads of women driving in cars when women are not allowed to drive in cars, being an example of her being provocative. So absolutely love her. M.I.A, she's our number 2. So who is at number 1? So if you haven't guessed who is our quintessential quirky British female singer-songwriter, then where have you been? Because it must have been obvious. This woman burst onto the scene at the end of the 70s, 1978, having written a song when she was 17 years old based on Wuthering Heights, called Wuthering Heights. So I am, of course, talking about the phenomenal Kate Bush, the ultimate art pop eccentric, literary storytelling, interpretive dance. Woo! Don't you just love it? I've just done that again. And surreal musical ideas. She is just absolutely brilliant. We know that Running Up the Hill recently came to mass audience again, thanks to it being used in Stranger Things. But, you know, Kate Bush has just been thriving for the last, 13, nearly 40 years. She brought mime, mime-like movement, storytelling gestures, and expressive choreography. She's a phenomenal choreographer and into her pop performances. And I think anyone who saw it at the end of the 1970s for the first time must have been like, wow, who is this wonderful woman? A time when most singers stood still at the microphone, her dramatic personality made her appear otherworldly and artistically daring. And don't we just love someone who is artistically daring? The songs often draw on novels, mythology, dreams, and fantasy narratives. So again, taking obscure directions with her music and not just troping out more of the same. She's imaginative, and it gives her music, again, that intellectual quality, which I think is pretty much a thread through most of the women that I have listed in this top 10. She can be quite mysterious, and I know that she lasted a big gig in 2014. She wouldn't allow anybody to take phones in. She wanted them to experience it for the first time, without, being recorded, and it was very closed down. And she lives quite reclusively. She's a lot more of an introvert than maybe her persona and her performances maybe give her kind of the idea of. So she's very good at studio experimentation and artistic control, which is always quite hard to have, especially when record companies get in there and they don't always want to follow you and your dreams. She was known for taking strong creative control, experimenting with unusual song structures, layered vocals, and innovative production techniques. This position her as a quirky pioneer who blurred the line between pop star and avant-garde artist. So she is our number one, is our quirky British female singer-songwriter. Do you agree that she deserves to be at number one? Is there somebody I missed out on the list? Feel free to let me know and comment below. So that was our top 10. That's a little overview. Do you agree with me? Do you like some of the choices that I have made? We've kind of sort of covered the quirkiness of British women in music here, haven't we? See there's a bit of a recognisable cultural pattern, being distinctive, unique, authentic, creative, explaining that female perspective and not just be romantic love tropes all the time. There's a lot of quirkiness, some politics, some unusual fashion, some unusual sound, some unusual dance moves as well. And again, it gives that British identity that maybe we don't always see in other international artists. There's that individualism and creative independence, which I think is definitely something that we can see as a thread through the women that have made it onto this top 10. Self-directed artists rather than manufactured performers. And there's nothing wrong with being a manufactured performer or arriving to your own artistry through the manufactured route. But definitely, I think that the women that we're celebrating here are very unique and distinctive and have been given the opportunity to allow themselves to be these artists. They write or co-write their own material, they create strong visual concepts, they experiment with genre and performance. They are performers. There's a lot that they bring to their art, to their craft. And this suggests a cultural image of British women as intellectually engaging, aren't we just? Imaginative and artistically autonomous. Like, we like to have control over what we put out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I suppose that goes against a lot of things because women aren't always given those opportunities or haven't in the past. So to be able to lead the way with that is absolutely phenomenal. And British pop culture traditionally celebrates eccentric characters. And I think that word was used a lot as I spoke a little bio on each of the artists featured. And that unconventional behavior, we definitely like maybe someone who's going to push those boundaries, from theatrical performance style to unusual fashion choices, ironic humor, or political stance. These artists reflect a wider national tendency, and we value individuality over conformity. We don't necessarily want you to conform. We want you to be your own unique, distinctive person. Subtle humor and understatement. Anyone who can use irony and sarcasm as well as some of these women can, absolutely phenomenal. Emotional depth mixed with theatrical flair. We like a little bit of performance. And everyone loves a bit of a crazy lady, don't they? I know I do. And this contributes to a global perception of British women as distinctive rather than polished or predictable. That unpredictability is definitely up there. So I'm going to leave my video here because I could go on a lot further. I know I've missed some amazing women out. I know that I could probably do a second list. Maybe I will do a little refresher list because there are so many British artists that could definitely have featured, and some really amazing new British artists, that like Ray, for example, Olivia Dean. We're getting, Dusty Springfield from the past. We've got so many women that have definitely been missed out on the list. Foxes, just because we haven't got time to put them all in here. So why don't you let me know if any of these are your favorites. Is there anybody I've missed? Is there somebody you think desperately needs to be maybe in my next Quirky British Female list? That's all for now. Thanks for joining me. Ta-ta for now. Bye.